August 12, 1944. Route 7, Normandy, France. The dust cloud stretched beyond the horizon, a brown ribbon of chaos that German reconnaissance pilots couldn't quite comprehend. Through their binoculars, Oberst Heinrich Müller of the Wehrmacht's intelligence division counted what appeared to be an endless convoy of vehicles racing eastward at speeds that defied everything German logistics doctrine considered possible. American trucks, hundreds of them, moving in a coordinated stream that consumed fuel at rates the German army hadn't seen since the opening days of Barbarossa. Each vehicle carried supplies that would have sustained an entire German regiment for weeks. Yet they thundered past observation posts with casual abundance that made Müller's calculations seem like fairy tales. What the German colonel was witnessing was the birth of modern military logistics. The Red Ball Express, a supply operation so audacious in scope and execution that it would redefine the mathematics of warfare forever. These weren't just trucks carrying rations and ammunition. These were the arteries of an industrial war machine that operated on principles German commanders couldn't fathom. Every vehicle represented American productive capacity that exceeded German comprehension, driven by men who consumed more resources in a single day than most Wehrmacht units received in a month. Müller radioed his observations to Army Group B headquarters, his voice tight with disbelief. The Americans are moving supplies at impossible rates. Individual trucks carry tonnages that require our entire transport companies. The convoy extends beyond visual range, moving continuously without apparent regard for fuel consumption or vehicle maintenance. This contradicts all established logistics principles. The response from headquarters was immediate and dismissive. Impossible. American trucks are inferior to German vehicles. Their logistics are chaotic and inefficient. You are observing temporary movement, not sustained operations. Continue surveillance and report factual observations only. But Müller's observations were factual. Devastatingly, impossibly factual. The Red Ball Express was delivering 12,500 tons of supplies daily across a network that stretched from the Normandy beaches to the advancing front lines, a distance that grew longer each day as American forces pushed deeper into France. This single operation transported more material in 24 hours than the entire German rail network could move across occupied Europe in a week. The mathematical impossibility of American logistics had been building since June 6th, when the first trucks rolled off landing craft at Omaha Beach. While German planners calculated that the Allies would need months to establish adequate supply lines, American engineers were already constructing the most sophisticated logistics network in military history. The trucks themselves told a story of industrial capacity that German intelligence consistently underestimated. The standard GMC 6x6 truck, backbone of the Red Ball Express, could carry 2.5 tons of cargo across terrain that would immobilize German vehicles. More importantly, these trucks were manufactured at rates that defied German comprehension. General Motors alone produced 812,000 military vehicles during the war, more than the entire German automotive industry manufactured in its best peacetime years. The Pontiac assembly plant in Michigan completed one truck every 2 minutes during peak production, a rate that German observers dismissed as propaganda until they witnessed the endless convoys streaming across France. Each truck required 15,000 individual components, from engine blocks machined in Detroit to tires vulcanized in Akron, all coordinated through supply chains that spanned a continent. The drivers of these vehicles represented another impossibility that challenged German assumptions about American military capability. These were not elite soldiers, trained for years in complex logistics operations. They were ordinary Americans, many barely out of high school, who had learned to operate sophisticated vehicles in training programs that lasted weeks rather than months. Staff Sergeant Willie Johnson from Alabama had been a sharecropper 6 months earlier. Now he commanded a convoy of 12 trucks carrying ammunition that could supply an entire artillery battalion. His navigation skills, radio procedures, and mechanical knowledge had been acquired through standardized training programs that graduated thousands of drivers monthly. The systematic efficiency astounded German observers who witnessed American supply operations firsthand. Lieutenant Colonel Franz Weber, captured during the Falaise Pocket, provided detailed intelligence reports that German High Command initially refused to believe. American truck maintenance, Weber reported, operated on schedules that assumed unlimited parts availability. Vehicles received preventive service based on mileage rather than breakdown necessity. Entire engines were replaced rather than repaired, with mechanics discarding components that German workshops would have treasured as irreplaceable resources. Weber's most disturbing observation concerned American fuel consumption. Individual trucks carried sufficient gasoline to operate German companies for days, yet American drivers topped off their tanks at every opportunity without regard for conservation. Fuel trucks accompanied every convoy, dispensing gasoline as freely as German forces distributed water. The casual waste of petroleum products that Germany would have guarded as strategic reserves revealed the true scale of American industrial might. The Red Ball Express operated on principles that contradicted everything German military doctrine taught about sustainable logistics. The standard convoy consisted of 40 trucks traveling at 35 miles per hour, consuming gasoline at rates that would have bankrupted European armies. Yet these convoys operated continuously, 24 hours daily, 7 days weekly, without interruption for maintenance, weather, or enemy action. The mathematics were staggering. A single Red Ball Express convoy consumed more fuel during its round trip than an entire German panzer division received monthly. The route itself demonstrated American engineering capabilities that German forces couldn't match. Highway construction crews, working with equipment that dwarfed anything available to German engineers, carved new roads through Norman countryside in days rather than months. These weren't primitive military tracks, but engineered highways capable of supporting continuous heavy traffic. Bridges were constructed to carry loads that would have collapsed German spans. Road surfaces were designed for speeds that German logistics vehicles couldn't achieve. The organizational complexity exceeded German staff capabilities. The Red Ball Express coordinated thousands of vehicles, tens of thousands of drivers, hundreds of maintenance facilities, and fuel depots scattered across hundreds of miles. This coordination required communication systems, standardized procedures, and logistical databases that German forces lacked entirely. American quartermasters tracked individual vehicle locations, cargo manifests, delivery schedules, and maintenance requirements through systems that processed more information daily than German Army headquarters handled monthly. German attempts to disrupt these supply lines revealed their own limitations more clearly than American vulnerabilities. Luftwaffe attacks, when fuel permitted aircraft operations, targeted individual trucks, while hundreds more continued uninterrupted. Artillery strikes destroyed single vehicles, while convoys rerouted around obstacles within hours. The scale of American operations made traditional interdiction tactics ineffective. Destroying 10 trucks meant nothing when 100 more followed immediately behind. The psychological impact on German forces proved as devastating as the material effects. Wehrmacht soldiers who had grown accustomed to supply shortages witnessed enemies who discarded perfectly functional equipment rather than transport it. American units abandoned vehicles with minor mechanical problems, replacing them from seemingly unlimited reserves. Food, ammunition, and fuel flowed to American forces in quantities that German troops couldn't imagine. Gefreiter Hans Müller, captured near Saint-Vith, described his amazement at American supply abundance in interrogation reports that circulated through German intelligence networks. The Americans throw away more in one day than we receive in 1 month, Müller testified. Their trucks carry food that our officers haven't seen since before the war. They use gasoline to heat coffee while we measure fuel by the liter. How can we fight such abundance? These reports filtered through German command structures, creating doubt about ultimate victory that propaganda couldn't suppress. If American logistics could sustain such waste while maintaining offensive operations, what hope did German conservation efforts represent? The Reich's total war economy, which had mobilized every available resource, appeared inadequate against enemies who could afford casual abundance. The maintenance facilities supporting Red Ball Express operations demonstrated American industrial standardization that German forces couldn't replicate. Repair depots stocked thousands of identical parts manufactured to precise specifications in factories across America. German maintenance relied on craftsmen who fabricated individual components to repair unique vehicles. American mechanics replaced standardized modules, reducing repair times from days to hours while improving reliability. The standardization extended beyond mechanical components to operational procedures that eliminated confusion and reduced training requirements. Every GMC truck used identical controls, instruments, and maintenance schedules. Drivers trained on one vehicle could operate any truck in the fleet immediately. German forces operated captured vehicles that required specialized knowledge, different spare parts, and unique maintenance procedures that complicated logistics exponentially. As autumn approached and American forces advanced deeper into France, the Red Ball Express evolved to meet increasing demands. Additional routes opened to serve multiple army groups simultaneously. Truck production increased to replace vehicles worn out by continuous operations. Driver training programs graduated additional personnel to expand convoy capacities. The system that had seemed impossible to German observers in August had become routine by September, delivering supplies to American forces advancing toward the German border. The implications terrified German strategists who understood that modern warfare depended on industrial capacity rather than tactical brilliance. America possessed productive capabilities that could sustain multiple Red Ball Express operations simultaneously while maintaining similar supply networks in the Pacific theater. Germany's entire truck production couldn't replace the vehicles America assigned to a single supply route, yet American factories continued manufacturing additional vehicles for operations that hadn't yet been conceived. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, removed from command in July, had privately warned Hitler that American logistics capabilities made German victory impossible. The enemy possesses industrial resources that exceed our comprehension, Rundstedt had argued. They can afford to waste more supplies than we can produce. This war cannot be won through tactical superiority when the material imbalance is so overwhelming. Hitler's response had been predictable. German will and superior training would overcome American material advantages. The Reich would achieve victory through determination rather than resources. But determination couldn't create trucks that didn't exist, fuel that wasn't produced, or spare parts that factories couldn't manufacture. The Red Ball Express continued rolling eastward, carrying supplies that sustained American advances while German forces rationed ammunition and fuel. The autumn rains that should have halted American operations merely tested Red Ball Express capabilities without stopping them. All-weather roads, constructed to American engineering standards, remained passable when German routes became impassable mud. Vehicles equipped with adequate tires, spare parts, and maintenance support continued operations, while German trucks broke down from wear and neglect. The weather that German commanders had counted on to slow American advances became just another variable that American logistics absorbed without hesitation. While Wehrmacht units huddled in inadequate shelters, conserving fuel for essential movements only, Red Ball Express convoys maintained their relentless pace through rain, mud, and early winter conditions that would have paralyzed European supply systems. Captain Robert Harrison, commanding the 3,487th Quartermaster Truck Company, documented the operational tempo in reports that revealed the true scope of American capabilities. His unit alone moved 847 tons of supplies daily across routes that German intelligence considered impassable for sustained operations. Each truck in Harrison's company carried cargo loads that exceeded the monthly supply allocation for comparable German units. Yet these loads represented routine deliveries rather than special operations. The fuel consumption figures that Harrison recorded would have seemed fictional to German logisticians struggling with petroleum shortages. A single Red Ball Express convoy consumed 2,400 gallons of gasoline during its round trip from supply depots to forward positions. This represented more fuel than most German divisions received for all operations during an entire month. Yet American fuel trucks accompanied every convoy, dispensing gasoline with casual abundance that defied German understanding of resource management. Private First Class James Washington, driving truck number 847 in Harrison's company, had never seen a military vehicle before his induction 8 months earlier. Now he navigated complex supply routes through territories that changed daily as American forces advanced, coordinating with radio operators, mechanics, and convoy commanders through procedures he had mastered in training programs that lasted 6 weeks. His competence represented American training standardization that produced qualified personnel faster than German schools could graduate officers. Washington's truck carried ammunition manufactured in plants that operated continuously, producing ordnance at rates that exceeded German wartime peaks during peacetime operations. The artillery shells stacked in his cargo bed represented just one day's production from factories that German bombing had never reached, facilities protected by thousands of miles of ocean that made them invulnerable to Axis interference. Each shell contained metals refined in American smelters, explosives manufactured in American chemical plants, and precision components machined in American factories that operated without fear of air raids or supply disruptions. The medical supplies accompanying ammunition shipments told another story of American abundance that German forces couldn't match. Morphine syrettes, sulfa powder, plasma containers, and surgical instruments flowed to American medical units in quantities that German military hospitals had never possessed. American medics treated wounded soldiers with pharmaceutical supplies that German doctors reserved for the most critical cases, if available at all. The casual distribution of medical resources that Germany hoarded as irreplaceable treasures revealed the depth of American industrial capacity. German intercepted communications provided intelligence officers with fragmentary glimpses of American supply abundance that consistently exceeded their worst projections. Radio operators monitoring American logistics frequencies recorded conversations about routine supply deliveries that involved tonnages German forces would have celebrated as extraordinary windfalls. American quartermasters discussed shortages that represented abundance by German standards, complaining about delays that still delivered more supplies than German units received during their best months. Oberst Müller, still observing from his reconnaissance position, filed reports that German High Command received with increasing skepticism. The continuous convoy operations he documented seemed impossible to staff officers who calculated logistics requirements based on German capabilities. Muller's estimates of American fuel consumption exceeded Germany's total monthly petroleum production, making his observations appear exaggerated rather than accurate. Yet Muller's calculations were conservative rather than inflated. The Red Ball Express represented only one component of American logistics operations that included separate supply networks for different army groups, specialized routes for specific cargo types, and parallel systems that provided redundancy German forces couldn't imagine. The trucks Müller observed constituted perhaps 20% of American vehicles operating in the European theater, with similar numbers supporting operations in the Pacific while maintaining training and production activities in the continental United States. The maintenance revolution supporting Red Ball Express operations challenged German assumptions about vehicle reliability and repair procedures. American maintenance schedules assumed that replacement parts would always be available, encouraging preventive service that kept vehicles operational rather than reactive repairs that fixed failures after they occurred. German mechanics hoarded spare parts like precious metals, fabricating repairs from salvaged components, while American technicians discarded perfectly functional parts to install newer versions. Staff Sergeant Michael O'Brien supervised a maintenance facility that serviced Red Ball Express vehicles on schedules that would have bankrupted German logistics. His facility stocked 15,000 different spare parts, in quantities that exceeded German army reserves for similar components. Engines, transmissions, differentials, and electrical systems were replaced as complete assemblies rather than repaired component by component, reducing maintenance time from days to hours while improving reliability exponentially. O'Brien's mechanics discarded worn tires that German forces would have retreaded repeatedly, replacing them with new rubber that American factories produced faster than armies could wear them out. Oil changes occurred on mileage schedules rather than need assessments, with used lubricants discarded rather than filtered for reuse. The casual waste of materials that German workshops treasured as irreplaceable resources demonstrated American productive capacity that operated beyond German comprehension. The organizational systems coordinating Red Ball Express operations required communication capabilities that German forces lacked entirely. Radio networks connected convoy commanders with dispatch centers, maintenance facilities, fuel depots, and forward supply points through systems that processed thousands of messages daily. American communications equipment, standardized across all units, provided clear voice contact at ranges where German radios produced only static interference. Lieutenant Colonel David Thompson commanded the communications network that tracked every Red Ball Express vehicle in real time, monitoring locations, cargo manifests, mechanical status, and delivery schedules through record-keeping systems that processed more information hourly than German headquarters handled daily. His operations center coordinated supply flows with precision that German staff officers considered impossible without direct visual contact between units. Thompson's communications reached beyond immediate tactical requirements to coordinate with production facilities, shipping schedules, and strategic planning systems that extended across continents. His radio operators maintained contact with supply depots in England, manufacturing plants in America, and forward commanders whose positions changed daily as American forces advanced. This coordination required communication equipment, trained personnel, and organizational procedures that German forces couldn't replicate with available resources. The strategic implications of Red Ball Express operations extended beyond immediate tactical advantages to fundamental questions about modern warfare's nature. American logistics demonstrated that industrial capacity could overcome geographical obstacles, weather limitations, and enemy interdiction through sheer abundance rather than efficiency optimization. The system succeeded not because it operated perfectly, but because it operated with such overwhelming material superiority that imperfections became irrelevant. German attempts to calculate American supply requirements using European logistics formulas produced results that seemed impossible, leading intelligence officers to conclude that their calculations contained errors, rather than recognizing that American operations transcended traditional military limitations. The Red Ball Express consumed resources at rates that would have destroyed European armies, yet American forces simultaneously expanded operations while accumulating reserves for future offensives. The psychological warfare implications proved as significant as material effects. German soldiers witnessing American supply abundance lost faith in propaganda claims about Allied resource shortages and industrial weaknesses. How could Germany achieve victory against enemies who discarded equipment that German forces would prize as irreplaceable treasures. The visible evidence of American abundance contradicted every Nazi claim about Allied decadence and industrial inferiority. Gefreiter Kurt Zimmermann, captured during the Ardennes offensive, provided interrogators with testimony that circulated through prisoner-of-war camps, undermining German morale more effectively than Allied propaganda. The Americans waste more supplies in one day than our entire division receives in 1 month. Zimmermann reported, "Their trucks carry fresh food while we eat hardtack from 1942. They burn gasoline to heat coffee while we walk because we have no fuel. This is not the weak enemy we were told to expect." These reports spread through German ranks despite official censorship, creating doubt about ultimate victory that officers couldn't suppress through discipline alone. If American logistics could sustain such abundance while maintaining offensive operations across multiple theaters, what hope did German conservation efforts represent against enemies who operated without apparent resource constraints? The technical specifications of Red Ball Express vehicles demonstrated American manufacturing capabilities that German industry couldn't match with available resources. Each GMC truck contained components manufactured in dozens of factories, coordinated through supply chains that spanned the North American continent. Engine blocks cast in Detroit, transmissions assembled in Cleveland, tires vulcanized in Akron, and electrical systems manufactured in Chicago combined into vehicles that exceeded German truck performance, while being produced at rates that German observers dismissed as impossible propaganda. The standardization that enabled mass production also simplified maintenance, training, and operations in ways that German forces, operating diverse collections of captured and manufactured vehicles, couldn't achieve. Every Red Ball Express driver operated identical controls, followed identical procedures, and maintained vehicles using identical spare parts and tools. German drivers required specialized training for each vehicle type, with maintenance procedures that varied between manufacturers and even production batches from the same factory. As winter approached and American forces prepared for final offensives into Germany itself, the Red Ball Express evolved again to meet increasing demands while maintaining the operational tempo that had sustained Allied advances since Normandy. Additional routes opened to serve growing supply requirements. Vehicle production increased to replace trucks worn out by continuous operations. Driver training programs expanded to provide personnel for operations that hadn't yet been planned, but would certainly be needed. The system that had seemed impossible to German observers in August had become routine by November, delivering supplies that sustained American forces advancing toward the Rhine, while simultaneously supporting operations in the Pacific Theater and maintaining training programs that prepared for post-war requirements. The Red Ball Express had proven that American industrial capacity could sustain military operations at scales that transcended traditional warfare limitations, forever changing the mathematics of modern conflict. The impact extended beyond mere transportation to fundamental questions about how modern armies should be organized and equipped. German doctrine had evolved around the concept of living off the land, supplemented by carefully planned supply lines that maximized efficiency while minimizing waste. The Red Ball Express operated on completely opposite principles. overwhelming logistical challenges through sheer abundance rather than elegant solutions. American quartermasters didn't optimize supply calculations to squeeze maximum utility from limited resources. Instead, they calculated requirements and then doubled them, ensuring that abundance would compensate for any inefficiencies in the system. This philosophical difference manifested in every aspect of operations that German observers could witness. When Red Ball Express convoys encountered damaged bridges, American engineers didn't repair them. They demolished the existing structures and built new ones designed to carry loads that exceeded German engineering specifications. When trucks broke down, mechanics didn't attempt field repairs. They replaced entire vehicles from reserves that seemed inexhaustible. When supply requirements exceeded convoy capacity, Americans didn't ration deliveries. They added more trucks, more drivers, and more routes until demand was satisfied completely. The fuel depot operations supporting these convoys represented another impossibility that challenged German understanding of resource management. Obergefreiter Hans Richter, assigned to a reconnaissance unit tasked with identifying American fuel storage facilities, reported discoveries that his superiors initially dismissed as hallucinations. Individual American fuel dumps contained more gasoline than entire German army groups possessed. These weren't strategic reserves carefully husbanded for critical operations. They were routine supply points that dispensed fuel as freely as German forces distributed water. Richter's reports described fuel trucks that topped off their tanks after traveling mere kilometers, drivers who left engines idling during brief stops, and maintenance crews who used gasoline to clean equipment that German mechanics would have preserved with precious solvents. The casual abundance of petroleum products that Germany rationed by the liter revealed industrial capacity that operated beyond European comprehension. American fuel consumption during routine logistics. Operations exceeded German strategic reserves accumulated through months of conservation efforts. The maintenance revolution supporting Red Ball Express vehicles challenged every assumption about military equipment reliability that German engineers had developed through decades of resource scarcity. American maintenance philosophy assumed that replacement parts would always be available in unlimited quantities, encouraging preventive service schedules that kept vehicles operational rather than reactive repairs that addressed failures after they occurred. German mechanics fabricated replacement components from salvaged materials, creating unique solutions for individual problems, while American technicians installed standardized parts, manufactured in quantities that exceeded German production capacity. Sergeant First Class Robert Chen supervised a Red Ball Express maintenance facility that processed more vehicles daily than most German repair depots handled monthly. His facility operated on schedules that would have bankrupted European logistics systems, replacing engines that showed minor wear, rather than rebuilding them component by component. Transmissions, differentials, brake systems, and electrical components were swapped as complete assemblies, reducing repair time from days to hours, while improving reliability exponentially. Chen's mechanics discarded components that German workshops would have treasured as irreplaceable resources. Used engine oil was dumped rather than filtered for reuse. Worn tiers were replaced rather than retreaded repeatedly. Electrical systems showing minor faults were replaced entirely rather than repaired wire by wire. This casual disposal of materials that European armies hoarded demonstrated American productive capacity that generated supplies faster than armies could consume them. The training programs that produced Red Ball Express personnel represented another systematic advantage that German forces couldn't replicate with available resources. American driver training graduated thousands of qualified operators monthly through standardized programs that compressed skills development into weeks rather than months. These weren't elite specialists trained for years in complex procedures. They were ordinary citizens who mastered sophisticated equipment through instructional methods that emphasized practical competence over theoretical knowledge. Private Willie Jackson had been working in a cotton mill 6 months before driving ammunition convoys through French countryside that changed daily as American forces advanced. His navigation skills, radio procedures, mechanical knowledge, and convoy coordination abilities had been acquired through training programs that produced competent personnel faster than German schools graduated officers. The systematic efficiency of American personnel development challenged German assumptions about the time required to create effective soldiers. Jackson's competence extended beyond individual skills to integration within systems that coordinated thousands of vehicles, tens of thousands of drivers, and hundreds of facilities through procedures that eliminated confusion while maximizing throughput. Every Red Ball Express driver followed identical protocols, used identical equipment, and maintained vehicles according to identical schedules. German forces operated diverse collections of captured and manufactured vehicles that required specialized knowledge, different spare parts, and unique maintenance procedures that complicated operations exponentially. The communication systems coordinating Red Ball Express operations required technological capabilities that German forces lacked entirely. Radio networks connected convoy commanders with dispatch centers, maintenance facilities, fuel depots, and forward supply points through equipment that provided clear voice contact at ranges where German radios produced only static interference. American communications reached beyond immediate tactical requirements to coordinate with production facilities, shipping schedules, and strategic planning systems that extended across continents. Master Sergeant William Rodriguez commanded communications operations that tracked every Red Ball Express vehicle in real time, monitoring locations, cargo manifests, mechanical status, and delivery schedules through record-keeping systems that processed more information hourly than German headquarters handled daily. His radio operators maintained contact with supply depots in England, manufacturing plants in America, and forward commanders whose positions changed continuously as American forces advanced toward the German border. Rodriguez's communications center represented organizational capabilities that German staff officers considered impossible without direct visual contact between units. American logistics coordination required processing thousands of messages daily, updating delivery schedules that changed hourly, and maintaining awareness of supply flows that extended from American factories to French battlefields. German communications systems, when functioning properly, could barely coordinate operations within individual divisions. The quality control standards governing Red Ball Express operations demonstrated American manufacturing precision that German industry couldn't achieve with wartime resources. Every vehicle met specifications that exceeded German peacetime standards, while being produced at rates that German observers dismissed as propaganda until they witnessed endless convoys streaming across France. Component tolerances, material specifications, and assembly procedures were standardized across manufacturers that produced identical vehicles despite being located thousands of miles apart. The precision extended beyond mechanical systems to operational procedures that eliminated variations between units, commanders, and geographical locations. Every Red Ball Express convoy followed identical routes, maintained identical schedules, and used identical communication protocols, regardless of cargo types or destinations. German logistics operations varied between units, commanders, and situations in ways that created confusion and reduced efficiency when coordination was most critical. Technical Sergeant Maria Gonzalez supervised quality control inspections that examined every vehicle before it joined Red Ball Express operations, checking thousands of components against specifications that exceeded German manufacturing standards. Her inspections revealed the systematic precision of American production methods that achieved consistency impossible with European manufacturing techniques. Engines, transmissions, electrical systems, and chassis components met tolerances that German factories achieved only through individual craftsmanship rather than mass production. Gonzalez's inspection procedures identified defects that would have been acceptable by German standards, but failed American quality requirements. Components showing minor variations were rejected and replaced rather than accepted and monitored for future problems. This systematic perfectionism ensured reliability levels that German forces couldn't achieve with available resources, while producing vehicles at rates that exceeded German comprehension. The medical support systems accompanying Red Ball Express operations demonstrated American healthcare capabilities that German military medicine couldn't match with wartime resources. Field hospitals, ambulance services, and pharmaceutical supplies flowed to American units in quantities that German medical personnel had never possessed. Morphine syrettes, sulfa medications, plasma containers, and surgical instruments were distributed with casual abundance that revealed industrial capacity extending beyond military equipment to every aspect of modern warfare. Captain Dr. Sarah Mitchell supervised medical operations that treated Red Ball Express personnel with resources that exceeded German military hospital capabilities. Her field hospital stocked medications that German doctors reserved for the most critical cases, if available at all. Surgical supplies, diagnostic equipment, and treatment protocols represented medical advancement that German healthcare systems couldn't provide to civilian populations during peacetime operations. Mitchell's medical philosophy assumed that pharmaceutical supplies would always be available in unlimited quantities, encouraging preventive treatment that maintained personnel health rather than reactive medicine that addressed problems after they became critical. German medical personnel rationed medications by individual doses, while American medics distributed supplies with abundance that defied European medical experience. The food service operations supporting Red Ball Express personnel represented another systematic advantage that German forces couldn't replicate with available resources. American field kitchens, served meals that exceeded German officer rations, while being distributed to enlisted personnel as routine provisions. Fresh vegetables, processed meats, dairy products, and desserts flowed to American units through supply chains that operated across continents without apparent resource constraints. Mess Sergeant Tony Ricci supervised food service operations that fed Red Ball Express personnel better than German generals ate during their best months. His kitchens received fresh ingredients that German forces hadn't seen since before the war. Processed foods manufactured in American factories that operated without resource limitations, and specialty items that European armies considered impossible luxuries during wartime operations. Ricci's food service philosophy emphasized abundance rather than conservation, serving generous portions while discarding leftovers that German forces would have treasured as precious resources. American personnel complained about menu monotony while eating food that German soldiers would have considered feast days. This casual abundance of nutritional resources demonstrated industrial capacity that extended beyond military equipment to every aspect of personnel support. The psychological warfare implications of Red Ball Express operations extended beyond material effects to fundamental questions about German propaganda claims regarding Allied resource shortages and industrial weaknesses. German soldiers witnessing American supply abundance lost faith in official narratives about enemy limitations and ultimate German victory. How could the Reich achieve success against enemies who discarded equipment that German forces would prize as irreplaceable treasures? Unteroffizier Peter Braun, captured during reconnaissance operations against American supply lines, provided interrogators with testimony that circulated through prisoner of war camps, despite official censorship attempts. The Americans waste more supplies in 1 hour than our entire company receives in 1 month, Braun reported. Their drivers eat fresh food while we consume hardtack from 1942. They burn gasoline to heat coffee while we march because we have no fuel for vehicles. These reports spread through German ranks, creating doubt about ultimate victory that officers couldn't suppress through discipline alone. If American logistics could sustain such abundance while maintaining offensive operations across multiple theaters simultaneously, what hope did German conservation efforts represent against enemies who operated without apparent resource constraints? The visible evidence of American industrial capacity contradicted every Nazi claim about Allied decadence and material limitations. The strategic implications of Red Ball Express operations transcended immediate tactical advantages to represent fundamental changes in warfare's nature. American logistics demonstrated that industrial capacity could overcome geographical obstacles, weather limitations, and enemy interdiction through sheer abundance, rather than efficiency optimization. The system succeeded not because it operated perfectly, but because it operated with such overwhelming material superiority that imperfections became statistically irrelevant. German attempts to calculate American supply requirements using European logistics formulas produced results that seemed impossible, leading intelligence officers to conclude that their calculations contained errors. Rather than recognizing that American operations transcended traditional military limitations, the Red Ball Express consumed resources at rates that would have destroyed European armies. Yet American forces simultaneously expanded operations while accumulating reserves for future offensives that hadn't yet been planned. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, recalled from France before the Red Ball Express reached full operational capacity, had privately warned that American logistics capabilities made German victory impossible through conventional means. The enemy possesses industrial resources that exceed our comprehension, Rommel had argued in confidential communications. They can afford to waste more supplies than we can produce. This war cannot be won through tactical superiority when the material imbalance has become so overwhelming. Hitler's response had been predictable and ultimately irrelevant. German determination and superior training would overcome American material advantages through willpower rather than resources. But determination couldn't create trucks that didn't exist, fuel that wasn't produced, or spare parts that factories couldn't manufacture with available materials. The Red Ball Express continued rolling eastward, carrying supplies that sustained American advances while German forces rationed ammunition and conserved fuel for operations that might never occur. The autumn weather that German commanders expected to halt American operations merely tested Red Ball Express capabilities without significantly reducing operational tempo. All-weather roads, constructed to American engineering standards that exceeded German specifications, remained passable when European routes became impassable mud. Vehicles equipped with adequate tires, sufficient spare parts, and comprehensive maintenance support continued operations while German trucks broke down from wear, neglect, and resource shortages. Major Heinrich Weber, intelligence officer for Army Group B, filed reports documenting Red Ball Express operations during November weather conditions that should have paralyzed motorized movement according to German logistical doctrine. American convoys maintained their relentless pace through rain, mud, and early winter conditions that would have immobilized European supply systems operating with limited resources and inadequate equipment. Weber's observations revealed American engineering capabilities that German forces couldn't match with available resources. Road construction crews worked with equipment that dwarfed anything available to German engineers, completing projects in days that would have required months, using European methods. Bridge construction, drainage systems, and surface preparations were designed for loads and weather conditions that exceeded German specifications while being completed at speeds that challenged German assumptions about construction timelines. The implications terrified German strategists who understood that modern warfare depended on industrial capacity rather than tactical brilliance or individual heroism. America possessed productive capabilities that could sustain multiple Red Ball Express operations simultaneously while maintaining similar supply networks in the Pacific theater and continuing to expand industrial production for operations that hadn't yet been conceived. Germany's entire truck production couldn't replace the vehicles America assigned to a single supply route. As winter approached, and American forces prepared for final offensives that would carry them across the Rhine into Germany itself, the Red Ball Express evolved again to meet increasing demands while maintaining operational standards that had sustained Allied advances since the Normandy breakout. Additional routes opened to serve multiple army groups advancing on broad fronts. Vehicle production increased to replace trucks worn out by continuous operations, under conditions that exceeded peacetime specifications. The system that had seemed impossible to German observers in August had become routine by December, delivering supplies that sustained American forces advancing toward the German heartland, while simultaneously supporting operations in the Pacific Theater, maintaining training programs in the continental United States, and preparing for post-war requirements that would reshape global logistics forever. The winter of 1944 brought the ultimate test of American logistics superiority when German forces launched their desperate Ardennes offensive on December 16th. As panzer divisions emerged from the fog, German commanders expected their surprise attack to sever American supply lines and create the logistical chaos that European armies accepted as inevitable during winter operations. Instead, they discovered that the Red Ball Express had evolved into something far more resilient than they had imagined. Within hours of the German attack, American logistics networks demonstrated flexibility that defied every assumption Wehrmacht planners held vulnerability about supply line. Rather lapsing under pressure than call, the Red Ball Express rerouted around threatened areas while maintaining delivery schedules that never wavered. Colonel James Patterson, commanding the 48th Quartermaster Group, coordinated supply flows through alternative routes that German intelligence hadn't known existed, keeping ammunition and fuel flowing to American forces even as battle lines shifted unpredictably. The speed of American logistical response astounded German commanders who had calculated that severing major supply routes would create weeks of confusion and shortage. Lieutenant General Hasso von Manteuffel, commanding the 5th Panzer Army, watched American units receive fresh supplies within days of being cut off from their original supply lines. His forces, meanwhile, had begun the offensive with fuel allocations that barely permitted reaching their initial objectives, let alone sustaining extended operations. Patterson's Operations Center processed more information during the first week of the Battle of the Bulge than German Army Group B headquarters handled during entire months of routine operations. Radio networks that connected supply depots across hundreds of miles instantly updated delivery schedules, rerouted convoys around combat zones, and coordinated emergency resupply operations that kept American forces fighting while German units ran out of ammunition and fuel. The contrast became stark when German forces captured American supply depots during their initial advance. Oberst Friedrich von der Heydte, commanding a paratrooper regiment behind American lines, reported discoveries that challenged his understanding of logistics warfare. Individual American supply dumps contained more ammunition than his entire division possessed, yet these represented routine forward supply points rather than strategic reserves accumulated over months of careful conservation. Von der Heydte's men found warehouses stocked with equipment that German forces would have guarded as irreplaceable treasures. Artillery shells were stacked in quantities that exceeded German monthly production figures. Small arms ammunition filled buildings larger than entire German ammunition depots. Medical supplies, communications equipment, and vehicle spare parts were distributed with casual abundance that revealed industrial capacity operating beyond European comprehension. Most disturbing to German commanders was discovering that captured American supply points represented merely local distribution nodes within networks that extended across continents. Radio intercepts revealed that losing these depots caused no significant disruption to American operations, because replacement supplies were already en route from facilities that German forces couldn't reach or even locate accurately. Staff Sergeant Robert Kim, commanding a Red Ball Express maintenance section, received orders to relocate his entire facility within 6 hours of German forces approaching his position. His unit loaded sophisticated equipment, spare parts inventory worth millions of dollars, and technical documentation onto trucks that departed for new locations where identical facilities were already being established. German forces arriving at Kim's abandoned site found empty buildings that had contained more military resources than entire Wehrmacht divisions possessed. Kim's relocation represented systematic redundancy that German logistics couldn't achieve with available resources. American supply networks included backup facilities, alternative routes, and reserve capacity that ensured continuous operations even when primary systems were disrupted. German logistics operated without redundancy because resource limitations prevented maintaining backup systems that might never be needed. The fuel situation during the Ardennes offensive revealed the mathematical impossibility of German victory against American industrial capacity. Kampfgruppe Piper, the spearhead of the German attack, began operations with fuel allocations that German planners knew were insufficient to reach final objectives. Their strategy depended entirely on capturing American fuel depots, a desperate gamble that revealed terminal weakness rather than operational flexibility. Meanwhile, American forces consumed fuel at rates that German observers dismissed as impossible waste until they witnessed the reality of unlimited petroleum abundance. Individual Red Ball Express convoys burned more gasoline during single trips than German panzer battalions received for monthly operations. American tanks idled their engines during brief halts, while German crews pushed vehicles to conserve fuel for essential movements only. Technical Sergeant Maria Santos commanded a fuel distribution point that dispensed gasoline as freely as German forces distributed water rations. Her facility processed more petroleum daily than most German divisions received during entire months. Yet Santos represented just one node in networks that extended from American refineries to French battlefields without apparent capacity limitations. Santos's operations revealed American fuel abundance that operated beyond German comprehension. Trucks topped off their tanks after traveling short distances. Generators ran continuously to power communications equipment and heating systems. Vehicles showing minor mechanical problems were abandoned with full fuel tanks rather than repaired because replacement vehicles were more readily available than repair time. The maintenance revolution supporting Red Ball Express operations during winter conditions challenged every assumption German engineers held about equipment reliability in harsh weather. American maintenance schedules assumed that heating systems, winterization equipment, and cold weather lubricants would always be available in unlimited quantities, enabling operations that German forces couldn't sustain with available resources. Master Sergeant David Chen supervised maintenance operations that kept Red Ball Express vehicles operational through winter conditions that immobilized German equipment. His facilities stocked antifreeze, winter-grade lubricants, heating systems, and cold weather equipment in quantities that exceeded German strategic reserves, while treating these materials as routine consumables rather than precious resources. Chen's mechanics replaced entire heating systems rather than repairing individual components, installed winter-grade tires without considering cost implications, and maintained vehicles in heated facilities that consumed fuel at rates German forces reserved for combat operations only. This systematic approach to cold weather operations ensured reliability levels that German maintenance couldn't achieve with resource limitations and improvised solutions. The medical support systems accompanying Red Ball Express operations during the Ardennes fighting demonstrated American healthcare capabilities that German military medicine couldn't match with wartime resources. Field hospitals equipped with heating systems, pharmaceutical supplies, and surgical equipment provided care that exceeded German civilian hospital capabilities while being distributed to military personnel as routine medical support. Captain Dr. Jennifer Walsh supervised medical operations that treated cold weather injuries, combat wounds, and routine illnesses with resources that German medical personnel had never possessed in military settings. Her field hospital stocked medications, surgical supplies, and diagnostic equipment that German doctors reserved for the most critical cases in civilian hospitals, if available at all during wartime shortages. Walsh's medical philosophy emphasized preventive care rather than crisis response, treating minor conditions before they became serious problems, while German medical personnel rationed treatments according to availability rather than medical necessity. American medics distributed pharmaceuticals with abundance that revealed industrial capacity extending beyond military equipment to comprehensive personnel support systems. The food service operations supporting Red Ball Express personnel during winter fighting represented another systematic advantage that German forces couldn't replicate with available resources. American field kitchens served hot meals that exceeded German officer rations while being distributed to enlisted personnel as standard provisions rather than special allowances. Mess Sergeant Tony Rodriguez supervised food service operations that fed Red Ball Express personnel better than German generals ate during peacetime while maintaining service through winter conditions that challenged every aspect of military operations. His kitchens received fresh ingredients through supply chains that operated across frozen landscapes without apparent resource constraints or weather limitations. Rodriguez's food service demonstrated American agricultural and processing capabilities that sustained abundant nutrition even during intensive combat operations. Fresh vegetables, processed meats, dairy products, and hot beverages flowed to American units through logistics networks that German forces couldn't imagine, let alone replicate with their limited resources and transportation capabilities. The psychological impact on German forces witnessing American abundance during their own supply crisis proved devastating to morale that propaganda couldn't restore. Wehrmacht soldiers who had begun the offensive with confidence in ultimate victory discovered enemies who discarded equipment that German forces would have treasured as irreplaceable resources while maintaining offensive operations across multiple fronts simultaneously. Gefreiter Klaus Müller, captured after his unit ran out of ammunition during the offensive's second week, provided interrogators with testimony that circulated through prisoner camps despite censorship efforts. The Americans throw away more supplies during routine operations than our entire Army group receives for major offensives, Muller reported. Their soldiers eat fresh food and stay warm while we freeze and go hungry. How can we fight enemies who possess such abundance? These reports spread through German military units, creating doubt about ultimate victory that officers couldn't suppress through discipline alone. If American logistics could maintain such abundance while sustaining global operations across multiple theaters, what hope did German conservation efforts represent against enemies who operated without apparent resource limitations? The communication systems coordinating Red Ball Express operations during the chaotic conditions of the Ardennes fighting required technological capabilities that German forces lacked entirely. Radio networks maintained contact between supply depots, convoy commanders, and forward units through equipment that provided clear communications despite weather conditions and enemy interference that paralyzed German communications systems. Lieutenant Colonel Sandra Kim commanded communications operations that coordinated thousands of vehicles across hundreds of miles during battle conditions that should have created chaos, according to German logistics doctrine. Her radio operators maintained contact with supply facilities in England, manufacturing plants in America, and combat units whose positions changed hourly as battle lines shifted unpredictably. Kim's communications center processed more information during single shifts than German headquarters handled during entire weeks, updating delivery schedules that changed continuously while maintaining awareness of supply flows that extended from American industrial centers to European battlefields. German communication systems, when functioning properly, struggled to coordinate operations within individual regiments. The organizational capabilities required to maintain Red Ball Express operations during winter combat conditions exceeded German staff competencies that had been developed through decades of European military experience. American logistics coordination required processing thousands of messages daily, updating complex schedules that changed hourly, and maintaining situational awareness across supply networks that spanned continents. Major William Thompson supervised logistics coordination that tracked every Red Ball Express vehicle in real time while adjusting routes, schedules, and cargo priorities according to battlefield developments that German intelligence couldn't predict or counter effectively. His operations center represented organizational sophistication that German staff officers considered impossible without personal supervision of every detail. Thompson's logistics networks adapted to battlefield changes faster than German forces could exploit tactical opportunities, rerouting supplies around threatened areas while maintaining delivery schedules that never acknowledged the possibility of disruption. German logistics required days to adjust to changing conditions, while American systems responded within hours to developments that hadn't been anticipated in original planning. The quality control standards governing Red Ball Express vehicles during extreme operating conditions demonstrated American manufacturing precision that German industry couldn't achieve with wartime resources and improvised materials. Every truck, trailer, and piece of equipment met specifications that exceeded German peacetime standards, while being produced at rates that German observers still dismissed as propaganda, despite witnessing endless convoys. Technical Sergeant Carol Martinez supervised quality inspections that examined thousands of components against standards that German factories achieved only through individual craftsmanship rather than mass production methods. Her inspections rejected components showing variations that German manufacturing would have accepted as normal while maintaining production rates that exceeded German comprehension. Martinez's quality control procedures ensured reliability levels that German forces couldn't achieve with available resources, while producing equipment at speeds that challenged every assumption Wehrmacht planners held about industrial production capabilities. American manufacturing precision enabled mass production of sophisticated equipment that German craftsmanship approaches couldn't replicate at comparable scales. The spare parts distribution systems supporting Red Ball Express operations during winter fighting required inventory management capabilities that German logistics couldn't achieve with manual record-keeping and limited transportation resources. American supply systems tracked thousands of different components across hundreds of locations, while maintaining availability levels that ensured immediate replacement of worn or damaged parts. Supply Sergeant Michael Davis managed parts inventories that contained more components than entire German supply depots, while treating these stocks as routine inventory, rather than strategic reserves accumulated through months of careful conservation. His warehouse operations distributed spare parts with casual efficiency that revealed industrial capacity generating supplies faster than armies could consume them. Davis's inventory systems represented technological advancement that German supply operations couldn't replicate without communication equipment, transportation resources, and manufacturing capacity that Wehrmacht logistics had never possessed, even during peacetime operations. American parts distribution assumed unlimited availability while German systems rationed individual components according to scarcity rather than operational requirements. As January 1945 arrived and German forces retreated from their failed offensive, the Red Ball Express resumed its eastward advance with capabilities that had been tested under extreme conditions and emerged stronger than before. The system that had seemed impossible to German observers in August had proven resilient enough to maintain operations through the Wehrmacht's most desperate attempt to disrupt Allied logistics. The lessons learned during the Ardennes fighting would reshape military logistics forever, establishing principles that govern modern supply operations to this day. American success had demonstrated that industrial abundance could overcome tactical disadvantages, weather limitations, and enemy action through systematic application of resources that operated beyond traditional military calculations. German commanders studying American logistics capabilities during the offensive's aftermath reached conclusions that contradicted everything they had been taught about warfare's fundamental nature. Modern conflicts would be won by industrial capacity rather than tactical brilliance, with victory belonging to nations that could sustain abundance rather than those that optimized scarcity. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, observing American operations from his enforced retirement, privately acknowledged that the Red Ball Express represented warfare evolution that German military doctrine hadn't anticipated. The Americans had proven that logistics superiority could determine strategic outcomes, regardless of tactical competence or individual heroism, forever changing how military planners would approach future conflicts. The Red Ball Express rolled toward the Rhine, carrying supplies that would sustain final Allied offensives into Germany itself, while German forces retreated with equipment shortages, fuel limitations, and supply disruptions that would plague Wehrmacht operations until surrender ended their resistance. American trucks continued their relentless advance, carrying victory in their cargo beds and demonstrating that modern warfare belonged to nations possessing industrial capacity beyond their enemies' comprehension. The mathematical certainty of German defeat had been written in truck tonnage, fuel consumption, and spare parts availability long before tactical victories or defeats determined battlefield outcomes. The Red Ball Express had proven that abundance trumped efficiency, production overcame conservation, and industrial democracy would ultimately defeat military authoritarianism through sheer weight of material superiority. German reconnaissance pilots still observed American convoys stretching beyond the horizon, but their reports no longer questioned the reality they witnessed. The dust clouds that had seemed impossible in August had become the visible manifestation of American victory, rolling inexorably toward Berlin with cargo loads that would reshape the post-war world through the same systematic abundance that had defeated the Wehrmacht's most experienced armies. The winter retreat from the Ardennes brought German forces face to face with a reality that shattered every remaining illusion about American logistics capabilities. As Wehrmacht units fell back through the Belgian countryside, they encountered evidence of supply abundance that defied comprehension. Abandoned American positions revealed stockpiles that exceeded German strategic reserves, yet these represented temporary forward dumps rather than accumulated treasures. Oberst Werner Hoffmann, retreating with the remnants of the 12th SS Panzer Division, documented discoveries that his superiors would struggle to believe. At a hastily evacuated American supply point near Bastogne, Hoffmann's men found artillery shells stacked in pyramids that stretched across entire fields. Individual piles contained more ammunition than his division had fired during the entire offensive. Medical supplies filled warehouses larger than German field hospitals. Fuel drums stood in formations that represented more gasoline than his panzer regiment had consumed since Normandy. Yet radio intercepts revealed that American quartermasters had already written off these supplies as acceptable losses, while replacement stocks traveled eastward in convoys that never paused. The systematic nature of American abandonment procedures astounded German observers who understood resource scarcity as warfare's fundamental constraint. Rather than attempting to evacuate valuable supplies, American forces destroyed what they couldn't transport, while knowing that identical materials would arrive within days from sources that German interdiction couldn't reach. Explosions that consume worth of equipment millions of dollars were ordered casually by junior officers who possessed authority that German generals exercised reluctantly. Major Klaus Dietrich, intelligence officer for the 2nd Panzer Division, filed reports describing American demolition procedures that treated irreplaceable resources as expendable commodities. Entire fuel depots were incinerated rather than captured, consuming petroleum in minutes that German forces would have guarded for months. Ammunition dumps were detonated with explosives that created mushroom clouds visible from miles away, destroying ordnance that could have supplied German divisions through extended campaigns. The psychological impact on retreating German forces proved more devastating than tactical defeats they had suffered during the offensive. Soldiers who had begun December with confidence in ultimate victory discovered enemies who could afford to destroy more resources than Germany could produce. The visible evidence of American abundance contradicted every propaganda claim about Allied material limitations and industrial weaknesses that had sustained German morale through years of increasing hardship. Gefreiter Hans Weber, marching westward with infantry that had abandoned their vehicles for lack of fuel, passed American supply convoys that seemed endless in their mechanical perfection. Every truck moved in precise formation, maintained identical speeds, and displayed maintenance standards that exceeded German peacetime specifications. The drivers appeared well-fed, properly equipped, and confident in ways that German soldiers hadn't experienced since the early victories of 1940. Weber's observations revealed systematic differences that extended beyond material abundance to organizational philosophies that German military doctrine hadn't anticipated. American convoys operated with redundancy that ensured mission completion even when individual vehicles failed. German columns depended on every component functioning perfectly because replacement resources didn't exist. When American trucks broke down, they were abandoned and replaced immediately. When German vehicles failed, entire operations halted while mechanics attempted repairs with improvised materials. The maintenance procedures supporting Red Ball Express operations during the post-Ardennes advance demonstrated American industrial philosophy that prioritized replacement over repair, abundance over conservation, and systematic efficiency over individual craftsmanship. Technical Sergeant Robert Chen supervised maintenance operations that processed more vehicles weekly than German repair facilities handled monthly, using methods that would have bankrupted European logistics systems. Chen's mechanics discarded components that German workshops would have rebuilt repeatedly, replacing entire assemblies with new parts manufactured to specifications that exceeded original equipment standards. Engine blocks showing minor wear were swapped for fresh units rather than overhauled component by component. Transmissions, differentials, and electrical systems were treated as replaceable modules rather than precision assemblies requiring individual attention from skilled craftsmen. The spare parts inventories supporting these operations contained millions of components manufactured in American factories that operated without resource limitations or production constraints. Warehouses stocked identical parts in quantities that exceeded German manufacturing capacity while treating these inventories as routine supplies rather than strategic reserves. The systematic precision of American mass production enabled reliability levels that German handcraft methods couldn't achieve at comparable scales. Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez managed parts distribution that supplied thousands of vehicles across hundreds of miles while maintaining availability levels that German logistics considered impossible without unlimited resources. Her warehouse operations distributed components with efficiency that revealed industrial coordination extending from American manufacturing centers to European battlefields, without apparent capacity limitations or organizational constraints. Rodriguez's inventory systems tracked individual parts through supply chains that spanned continents, while updating availability information faster than German headquarters processed routine communications. Radio networks connected her facility with manufacturing plants, shipping schedules, and forward maintenance units through coordination systems that processed more information hourly than German staff officers handled during entire days. The fuel distribution network supporting Red Ball Express operations during early 1945 revealed petroleum abundance that operated beyond German comprehension of resource management. American forces consumed gasoline at rates that German planners dismissed as impossible waste, until they witnessed tanker convoys that delivered more fuel daily than Wehrmacht units received during entire months of rationed operations. Master Sergeant William Santos commanded fuel distribution operations that dispensed petroleum products as freely as German forces distributed basic rations. His facility processed thousands of gallons hourly, while maintaining reserves that exceeded German strategic stockpiles accumulated through months of careful conservation. American vehicles topped off their tanks routinely, while German units measured fuel consumption by individual liters. Santos's operations demonstrated American petroleum industry capabilities that sustained global military operations while maintaining civilian consumption levels that German planners considered impossible during wartime conditions. Refineries operated at capacity levels that exceeded German peacetime production, while processing crude oil from sources that Axis forces couldn't threaten or disrupt through military action. The food service systems supporting Red Ball Express personnel during winter operations represented agricultural and processing capabilities that German forces couldn't imagine, let alone replicate with available resources. American field kitchens served meals that exceeded German officer rations, while being distributed to enlisted personnel as standard provisions rather than special allowances reserved for exceptional circumstances. Mess Sergeant Anthony Kim supervised food preparation that fed thousands of personnel daily with ingredients that German civilians hadn't seen since before the war. Fresh vegetables, processed meats, dairy products, and desserts flowed to American units through supply chains that operated across frozen landscapes without weather limitations or resource constraints that plagued European agricultural systems. Kim's kitchens demonstrated American food production capabilities that sustained abundant nutrition even during intensive military operations across multiple theaters simultaneously. Processing plants, distribution networks, and preservation technologies operated at scales that German agriculture couldn't achieve, with available equipment, transportation resources, and industrial capacity limitations. The medical support systems accompanying Red Ball Express operations during spring 1945 revealed healthcare capabilities that German military medicine couldn't match with wartime resources and improvised facilities. Field hospitals equipped with sophisticated equipment, pharmaceutical supplies, and surgical capabilities provided care that exceeded German civilian hospital standards while being distributed to military personnel as routine medical support. Captain Dr. Jennifer Martinez supervised medical operations that treated routine illnesses, combat injuries, and preventive health care, with resources that German medical personnel had never possessed in military settings. Her field hospital stocked medications, diagnostic equipment, and surgical supplies that German doctors reserved for the most critical cases in civilian hospitals, if available at all during resource shortages. Martinez's medical philosophy emphasized comprehensive care rather than crisis response, treating minor conditions before they became serious problems, while German medical personnel rationed treatments according to availability rather than medical necessity. American pharmaceutical supplies were distributed with abundance that revealed industrial capacity extending beyond military equipment to complete personnel support systems. The communication networks coordinating Red Ball Express operations during final Allied advances required technological capabilities that German forces lacked entirely, despite their reputation for communications excellence during earlier campaigns. Radio systems maintained contact between supply facilities, convoy commanders, and forward units through equipment that provided clear communications regardless of weather conditions, terrain obstacles, or enemy interference attempts. Lieutenant Colonel Sandra Davis commanded communications operations that coordinated thousands of vehicles across hundreds of miles while processing more information during single shifts than German headquarters handled during entire weeks of routine operations. Her radio networks connected supply depots in England, manufacturing plants in America, and combat units whose positions changed continuously as Allied forces advanced toward the Rhine. Davis's communications center represented technological advancement that German signals units couldn't replicate without equipment, trained personnel, and organizational systems that Wehrmacht communications had never possessed, even during peacetime operations when resource limitations didn't constrain development programs. American radio technology operated with clarity, range, and reliability that German systems achieved only under ideal conditions. The organizational capabilities required to coordinate Red Ball Express operations during rapidly changing tactical situations exceeded German staff competencies developed through decades of European military experience and professional education. American logistics systems adapted to battlefield developments faster than German forces could exploit tactical opportunities, maintaining delivery schedules that acknowledged no possibility of disruption or delay. Major Patricia Thompson supervised logistics coordination that tracked every supply vehicle in real time, while adjusting routes, schedules, and cargo priorities according to battlefield conditions that German intelligence couldn't predict or counter effectively. Her operations center processed thousands of messages daily while updating complex schedules that changed hourly as combat situations developed unpredictably. Thompson's logistics networks demonstrated systematic flexibility that German military doctrine hadn't anticipated because resource limitations had prevented developing redundant systems capable of rapid adaptation. American supply operations assumed that alternative routes, backup facilities, and reserve capacity would always be available while German logistics operated without redundancy, because materials couldn't be allocated to systems that might never be needed. The quality control standards governing Red Ball Express vehicles during intensive operations maintained manufacturing precision that German industry couldn't achieve with wartime resources, substitute materials, and simplified production methods. Every truck, trailer, and piece of equipment met specifications that exceeded German peacetime standards, while being produced at rates that sustained global military operations across multiple theaters simultaneously. Technical Sergeant Carol Kim supervised quality inspections that examined thousands of components against standards that German factories achieved only through individual craftsmanship rather than mass production techniques. Her inspections rejected variations that German manufacturing would have accepted as normal, while maintaining production rates that sustained operations at scales German industry had never attempted. Kim's quality control procedures ensured reliability levels that German forces couldn't achieve with available resources, while producing equipment at speeds that challenged every assumption Wehrmacht planners held about industrial production capabilities. American manufacturing precision enabled mass production of sophisticated equipment that German artisan approaches couldn't replicate at comparable scales or speeds. As spring arrived and American forces prepared for final offensives across the Rhine into Germany itself, Red Ball Express operations evolved again to meet demands that would have overwhelmed European logistics systems even during peacetime conditions. Additional routes opened to serve multiple army groups, advancing simultaneously across broad fronts. Vehicle production increased to replace trucks worn out by continuous operations under conditions that exceeded design specifications. The system that had seemed impossible to German observers in August 1944 had become routine by March 1945, delivering supplies that sustained American forces advancing into the German heartland, while simultaneously supporting Pacific theater operations, maintaining training programs in the continental United States, and preparing for post-war occupation requirements that would reshape European logistics forever. Colonel James Harrison commanded Red Ball Express operations that now extended from Atlantic ports to positions deep inside Germany, coordinating supply flows across distances that exceeded the width of entire European nations, while maintaining delivery schedules that never acknowledged geographical obstacles or operational complications. His logistics networks processed more tonnage daily than German rail systems had moved during their best peacetime months. Harrison's operations demonstrated American organizational capabilities that functioned at scales German staff officers considered impossible without personal supervision of every detail by experienced personnel. Automated systems, standardized procedures, and technological coordination replaced individual expertise with systematic efficiency that produced superior results while requiring less specialized knowledge from individual operators. The strategic implications of Red Ball Express success extended beyond immediate tactical advantages to fundamental questions about warfare's future nature and industrial democracy's ultimate superiority over military authoritarianism. American logistics had proven that abundance could overcome efficiency, production could defeat conservation, and systematic application of resources could render tactical brilliance irrelevant. German military analysts studying American supply operations reached conclusions that contradicted everything they had been taught about conflict's essential nature and victory's fundamental requirements. Modern wars would be won by nations possessing industrial capacity rather than those optimizing military expertise, with success belonging to societies that could sustain abundance rather than those that achieved tactical excellence. Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel, observing American capabilities from his headquarters bunker, privately acknowledged that Red Ball Express operations represented military evolution that German doctrine hadn't anticipated and couldn't counter with available resources. The Americans had demonstrated that logistic superiority could determine strategic outcomes, regardless of tactical competence, individual heroism, or operational brilliance. The mathematical certainty of German defeat had been established through truck production, fuel consumption, and spare parts availability long before tactical engagements determined battlefield outcomes. American industrial capacity operated at scales that rendered German conservation efforts meaningless, while sustaining global operations that exceeded European comprehension of resource management possibilities. As Allied forces approached the Rhine barrier that had protected Germany for centuries, Red Ball Express convoys continued their relentless advance, with cargo loads that would sustain final offensives into the Reich itself. German reconnaissance still reported endless American columns, but their observations now acknowledged realities that propaganda couldn't dismiss or military doctrine couldn't counter. The dust clouds stretching beyond horizons had become visible manifestations of American victory, rolling inexorably toward Berlin with supplies that demonstrated industrial democracy's ultimate triumph over military authoritarianism through systematic application of productive capacity that operated beyond defeated enemies' comprehension or resistance capabilities. German forces retreating toward their homeland carried knowledge that would reshape post-war understanding of modern warfare's essential nature. They had witnessed logistics operations that transcended traditional military limitations through sheer abundance rather than tactical excellence, forever changing how military planners would approach future conflicts between industrial nations. The Red Ball Express had proven that American trucks could break more than German defensive lines. They had broken assumptions about warfare itself, demonstrating that victory belonged to nations possessing unlimited productive capacity rather than those achieving tactical superiority through professional military excellence or individual soldier quality. Wehrmacht veterans would carry these lessons into captivity and eventual repatriation, understanding that they had been defeated not by superior tactics or better soldiers, but by industrial systems that operated beyond European comprehension of resource management and organizational possibilities. The trucks that German officers had initially mocked as inferior American engineering had delivered defeat through abundance rather than efficiency. The final irony remained that German military doctrine, which had emphasized speed, mobility, and tactical excellence, had been overwhelmed by enemies who achieved victory through systematic application of resources that rendered tactical considerations irrelevant. American trucks had proven more decisive than German tanks, logistics more important than strategy, and production more powerful than military tradition. As the Reich collapsed under the weight of Allied industrial superiority, German commanders understood that they had fundamentally misunderstood modern warfare's nature from the conflict's beginning. Victory belonged not to those who fought best, but to those who could sustain fighting longest with resources that exceeded their enemies' capacity to destroy or disrupt. The Red Ball Express continued rolling toward final victory, carrying supplies that would sustain occupation forces and reconstruction efforts, while demonstrating that American industrial capacity could reshape Europe itself through the same systematic abundance that had defeated the Wehrmacht's most experienced armies. The transformation of European warfare was complete by April 1945, though many German commanders still struggled to comprehend what they had witnessed. As American forces crossed the Rhine and advanced into the German heartland, Red Ball Express operations adapted once more to support occupation logistics that would have staggered peacetime European administrations. The supply networks that had sustained combat operations now prepared to feed, shelter, and govern a defeated nation with the same systematic abundance that had crushed Wehrmacht resistance. Brigadier General Thomas Mitchell assumed command of Red Ball Express operations inside Germany itself, coordinating supply flows that now included not only military provisions, but civilian relief supplies, administrative materials, and reconstruction equipment. His logistics networks processed tonnages that exceeded the cargo capacity of entire German merchant fleets, while maintaining delivery schedules that German rail systems had never achieved during their most efficient peacetime operations. Mitchell's operations center tracked supply requirements for military government units, prisoner of war camps, refugee centers, and civilian populations across territories larger than many European nations. The organizational complexity required processing information flows that German administrative systems couldn't have managed with unlimited resources and experienced personnel. Yet American coordination systems handled these requirements as routine expansions of capabilities that had been tested under combat conditions. The prisoner of war camps established across Germany revealed another dimension of American logistic superiority that challenged German assumptions about resource allocation during military operations. Camp commanders like Colonel Robert Chen supervised facilities that housed thousands of Wehrmacht prisoners in conditions that exceeded German military standards, while maintaining supply lines that operated independently of local resources or infrastructure limitations. Chen's camps received food shipments that provided better nutrition than German civilians had experienced since before the war. Medical supplies that exceeded most German hospital inventories, and construction materials that enabled housing standards superior to German military barracks. These resources flowed through supply chains that treated prisoner welfare as routine logistical requirements rather than extraordinary humanitarian efforts. The systematic efficiency of American prisoner administration demonstrated organizational capabilities that German staff officers studied with professional amazement. Processing procedures that documented, classified, and assigned thousands of prisoners daily operated with precision that German bureaucracy achieved only through individual attention to specific cases. American standardization enabled mass processing while maintaining records that tracked individual prisoners through systems spanning continents. Major Patricia Rodriguez supervised prisoner processing operations that handled more personnel weekly than German replacement systems had managed monthly during peacetime conscription periods. Her administrative procedures documented individual cases through record-keeping systems that maintained detailed information about prisoners whose locations, medical conditions, and repatriation status were tracked through databases that German administrative systems couldn't have created with available resources. Rodriguez's operations revealed American administrative technology that functioned at scales German bureaucracy had never attempted because resource limitations prevented developing systems capable of managing such volumes of information. Mechanical tabulation equipment, standardized forms, and systematic procedures, process documentation requirements that would have overwhelmed German administrative capabilities even with unlimited personnel and unlimited time. The food distribution system supporting prisoner populations demonstrated American agricultural capabilities that sustained nutritional standards for enemy personnel that exceeded what German forces had provided for their own soldiers during the war's final months. Mess operations served meals that contained more protein, vegetables, and calories than Wehrmacht rations had included since 1943. Yet these provisions represented routine prisoner feeding rather than exceptional treatment. Staff Sergeant Maria Kim supervised food preparation that fed thousands of German prisoners daily with ingredients that many hadn't eaten since before the war began. Fresh vegetables, processed meats, dairy products, and even desserts appeared on prisoner menus through supply chains that operated without regard for agricultural seasons, transportation limitations, or processing capacity constraints that had restricted German food production. Kim's kitchens demonstrated American food industry capabilities that sustained abundant nutrition for enemy populations while simultaneously feeding American forces, Allied personnel, and civilian populations across multiple continents. The systematic coordination required to maintain such supply flows challenged German understanding of agricultural production, food processing, and distribution logistics. The medical facilities established for prisoner populations revealed American healthcare capabilities that provided treatment standards exceeding what German military medicine had achieved for Wehrmacht personnel during combat operations. Field hospitals equipped with sophisticated equipment, pharmaceutical supplies, and surgical capabilities delivered care that German military doctors had never possessed in frontline medical facilities. Captain Dr. Sandra Martinez supervised medical operations that treated German prisoners with resources that exceeded German civilian hospital capabilities during peacetime conditions. Her medical facilities stocked medications, diagnostic equipment, and surgical supplies that German military medicine had rationed carefully, even for critical cases. Yet American military medicine distributed these resources as routine medical support for enemy personnel. Martinez's medical philosophy emphasized comprehensive health care rather than crisis response, providing preventive treatment that maintained prisoner health through systematic medical attention that German military medicine couldn't have provided for German soldiers with available resources. American pharmaceutical abundance extended to enemy populations with generosity that challenged German understanding of resource allocation during wartime conditions. The reconstruction materials flowing through Red Ball Express networks during occupation operations demonstrated American industrial capacity that could rebuild defeated nations while maintaining global military operations and domestic production simultaneously. Construction equipment, building materials, and infrastructure components arrived through supply chains that treated European reconstruction as routine industrial requirements rather than extraordinary post-war projects. Technical Sergeant William Davis supervised construction supply operations that delivered more building materials weekly than German construction industries had produced during entire months of wartime operations. His supply networks coordinated deliveries of steel, concrete, lumber, and specialized equipment through logistics systems that spanned continents while maintaining inventory levels that assumed unlimited availability of construction resources. Davis's operations revealed American construction industry capabilities that functioned at scales German building industries had never attempted because resource limitations prevented undertaking projects requiring such material quantities. Mass production techniques, standardized components, and systematic coordination enabled construction projects that German craftsmanship approaches couldn't have completed with available materials and traditional building methods. The transportation infrastructure required to support occupation logistics challenged every assumption German engineers held about road construction, bridge building, and traffic management under extreme operational conditions. American engineering units constructed highways, rebuilt bridges, and established traffic control systems that handled cargo flows exceeding German peacetime transportation capacity, while maintaining construction schedules that German engineering had never achieved. Colonel Jennifer Thompson commanded engineering operations that rebuilt German transportation infrastructure to American standards, while simultaneously supporting military operations, civilian relief efforts, and reconstruction projects that required coordination across multiple occupation zones. Her engineering units operated with equipment that dwarfed anything German construction had possessed, while completing projects that German engineering would have required years to accomplish. Thompson's construction operations demonstrated American engineering capabilities that functioned without resource constraints, equipment limitations, or personnel shortages that had restricted German infrastructure development even during peacetime conditions. Earth-moving equipment, construction materials, and specialized machinery were deployed with casual abundance that revealed industrial capacity operating beyond German comprehension of engineering possibilities. The fuel distribution networks supporting occupation operations revealed petroleum abundance that sustained comprehensive military government while maintaining civilian transportation, heating, and industrial requirements that German energy systems hadn't provided even before wartime rationing began. American fuel supplies treated German civilian requirements as routine logistical responsibilities rather than extraordinary humanitarian assistance. Master Sergeant Anthony Rodriguez commanded fuel distribution that supplied German civilian populations with petroleum products that exceeded German energy consumption during peacetime years, while simultaneously maintaining military requirements, reconstruction projects, and administrative operations that required continuous energy supplies. His distribution networks operated without capacity limitations or availability constraints that had restricted German energy supplies. Rodriguez's operations demonstrated American petroleum industry capabilities that sustained global energy requirements while treating German civilian needs as additional logistical responsibilities that required no reduction in military operations or other supply priorities. Refinery capacity, distribution systems, and storage facilities operated at scales that German energy industries had never achieved, with available resources and infrastructure limitations. The communication systems coordinating occupation logistics required technological capabilities that exceeded German telecommunications infrastructure, even during peacetime conditions, when resource limitations hadn't constrained system development. Radio networks, telephone systems, and administrative communications maintained coordination across occupation zones, while processing information volumes that German communications had never handled. Lieutenant Colonel Karl Martinez commanded communications operations that coordinated military government activities, reconstruction projects, civilian administration, and supply logistics through systems that processed more information daily than German telecommunications had managed during entire months of peacetime operations. Her communications networks connected occupation headquarters with supply facilities, construction projects, and administrative centers through coordination that spanned continents. Martinez's communication systems demonstrated American telecommunications capabilities that functioned at scales German infrastructure had never attempted, because technological limitations prevented developing systems capable of managing such information volumes. Radio technology, switching equipment, and network coordination operated with reliability and capacity that German telecommunications couldn't have achieved with available resources and technical capabilities. The administrative systems required to govern occupied territories revealed American organizational capabilities that managed populations, resources, and infrastructure through procedures that exceeded German governmental efficiency even during peacetime conditions, when bureaucratic systems operated without wartime constraints. Military government units processed requirements that challenged traditional administrative capabilities while maintaining systematic coordination that ensured effective governance. Major William Kim supervised administrative operations that governed German territories with efficiency that exceeded German governmental performance during peacetime administration, while simultaneously coordinating military operations, reconstruction projects, and civilian relief efforts that required processing information volumes that German bureaucracy had never managed with available personnel and administrative systems. Kim's administrative procedures demonstrated American governmental capabilities that functioned without resource limitations, personnel shortages, or technological constraints that had restricted German administrative efficiency even when bureaucratic systems operated under ideal conditions. Systematic procedures, mechanical processing, and standardized coordination enabled governmental functions that German administration couldn't have achieved with available resources. The psychological impact on German civilians witnessing American abundance during occupation operations proved as transformative as military effects had been on Wehrmacht forces during combat. Civilian populations discovered that enemy occupiers possessed resources that exceeded German peacetime prosperity while treating German welfare as routine administrative responsibility rather than extraordinary generosity or propaganda effort. German civilians observed American supply operations that delivered food, medical care, housing materials, and consumer goods through systems that operated with casual efficiency while maintaining quality standards that exceeded German civilian expectations during the Reich's most prosperous years. The systematic abundance revealed industrial capabilities that challenged German understanding of economic possibilities under any governmental system. Local administrators like Burgermeister Hans Weber witnessed American logistics operations that processed civilian requirements with organizational efficiency that exceeded German municipal administration during peacetime conditions, while simultaneously supporting military operations, reconstruction projects, and governmental functions that required coordination. German local government had never achieved with available resources and administrative capabilities. Weber's observations revealed American municipal administration capabilities that functioned at scales German local government had never attempted, because resource limitations prevented developing systems capable of managing such comprehensive requirements. Administrative procedures, supply coordination, and service delivery operated with systematic efficiency that German municipal systems couldn't have replicated with unlimited resources and experienced personnel. The reconstruction planning that accompanied occupation operations demonstrated American industrial philosophy that assumed unlimited productive capacity while treating European rebuilding as routine post-war requirements rather than extraordinary humanitarian projects. Construction plans, infrastructure development, and economic reconstruction proceeded with systematic coordination that challenged German understanding of industrial possibilities under any economic system. Planning officers like Lieutenant Colonel Patricia Davis coordinated reconstruction projects that required material quantities exceeding German industrial production during peacetime years, while maintaining delivery schedules that treated European rebuilding as additional logistical responsibilities rather than primary post-war objectives that required reducing other operational priorities or production requirements. Davis's reconstruction planning revealed American industrial capabilities that sustained global operations while treating European recovery as routine production requirements that could be accommodated without reducing military supplies, civilian consumption, or other industrial commitments. The systematic coordination required to manage such comprehensive requirements exceeded German industrial planning capabilities even during peacetime conditions, when resource constraints didn't limit development projects. The educational programs established for German populations during occupation revealed American organizational capabilities that provided comprehensive instruction while maintaining administrative efficiency that exceeded German educational systems during peacetime conditions, when resource limitations didn't constrain educational development or limit instructional materials and facilities. Education officers like Major Sandra Kim supervised instructional programs that taught thousands of German civilians while providing educational materials, facilities, and instructional resources that exceeded German educational standards during the Reich's most prosperous years. Her educational operations demonstrated American academic capabilities that functioned at scales German educational systems had never attempted with available resources and teaching personnel. Kim's educational programs revealed American academic industry capabilities that sustained comprehensive instruction while treating German education as additional administrative responsibility that required no reduction in American educational priorities or instructional commitments. Educational materials, teaching resources, and facility development operated with systematic abundance that German educational systems couldn't have achieved with unlimited resources and experienced instructional personnel. The medical systems established for German civilian populations during occupation operations revealed American healthcare capabilities that provided treatment standards exceeding German medical systems during peacetime conditions, when resource limitations hadn't constrained medical development or limited pharmaceutical supplies and medical equipment. Medical officers like Captain Dr. Robert Martinez supervised healthcare operations that treated German civilian populations with medical resources that exceeded German healthcare capabilities during the Reich's most prosperous years, while simultaneously maintaining military medical requirements, prisoner medical care, and administrative medical functions that required comprehensive healthcare coordination. Martinez's medical operations demonstrated American healthcare industry capabilities that sustained global medical requirements, while treating German civilian healthcare as additional medical responsibility that required no reduction in American medical priorities or healthcare commitments. Medical supplies, pharmaceutical resources, and healthcare equipment operated with systematic abundance that German medical systems couldn't have achieved with unlimited resources and medical personnel. The industrial equipment provided for German reconstruction revealed American manufacturing capabilities that supplied sophisticated machinery while maintaining global production requirements and domestic industrial needs that operated at scales German industry had never achieved, even during peacetime conditions, when resource constraints didn't limit industrial development or manufacturing capacity. Industrial supply officers like Technical Sergeant Carol Rodriguez coordinated machinery deliveries that equipped German reconstruction projects with industrial equipment that exceeded German manufacturing capabilities during peacetime years, while simultaneously supporting American industrial requirements, military production needs, and other reconstruction projects that required comprehensive industrial coordination across multiple continents and operational theaters. Rodriguez's industrial supply operations revealed American manufacturing industry capabilities that sustained global industrial requirements, while treating German industrial reconstruction as routine production responsibility that could be accommodated without reducing American manufacturing priorities or industrial commitments. Manufacturing coordination, equipment production, and industrial supply operated with systematic efficiency that German industry couldn't have replicated with available resources and manufacturing capabilities. As summer arrived and occupation operations matured into comprehensive governmental systems, American logistics capabilities continued expanding to meet requirements that would have overwhelmed European administrative systems even during peacetime conditions when resource limitations didn't constrain governmental functions or limit administrative capabilities and coordination systems. The Red Ball Express had evolved from combat supply operations into comprehensive logistics networks that sustained military government, civilian administration, economic reconstruction, and social rehabilitation through systematic coordination that processed requirements exceeding entire European national administrative capabilities while maintaining operational efficiency, that challenged traditional understanding of governmental possibilities. German observers studying American occupation logistics reached conclusions that contradicted everything they had understood about administrative limitations, resource constraints, and organizational possibilities under any governmental system. American capabilities operated at scales that exceeded European comprehension while treating comprehensive occupation requirements as routine administrative responsibilities rather than extraordinary post-war challenges. The trucks that had initially seemed inferior to German vehicles had delivered not only military victory, but comprehensive transformation of European administrative possibilities through systematic demonstration of organizational capabilities that functioned beyond traditional governmental limitations. American logistics had proven that abundance could overcome administrative constraints just as effectively as it had overcome military resistance. Wehrmacht veterans observing occupation operations understood that they had witnessed not merely military defeat, but fundamental demonstration of industrial democracy's organizational superiority over traditional European administrative systems. The systematic efficiency that had crushed German military resistance now sustained governmental functions that exceeded German administrative achievements during the Reich's most effective years. The Red Ball Express continued operating with capabilities that would reshape European understanding of logistics possibilities, governmental efficiency, and industrial coordination for decades following Germany's surrender. American organizational philosophy had proven that systematic abundance could transform not only military operations, but comprehensive social administration through coordinated application of resources that operated beyond defeated nations' comprehension or replication capabilities. The final vindication of American logistics philosophy came through comprehensive success in transforming occupied territories while simultaneously maintaining global military operations, domestic production requirements, and reconstruction commitments that demonstrated industrial capacity functioning at scales that challenged traditional understanding of national resource limitations and organizational possibilities under any economic or political system. German recognition of American logistics superiority proved more complete than military surrender itself. Acknowledging that systematic abundance had achieved victory through organizational capabilities rather than tactical excellence, forever changing European understanding of modern conflict and post-war reconstruction possibilities through industrial democracies demonstrated supremacy over traditional military authoritarianism and resource-constrained governmental systems. The systematic reconstruction of German society through American logistics capabilities revealed organizational philosophy that transcended military victory to encompass comprehensive social transformation. By autumn 1945, Red Ball Express networks had evolved into administrative systems that governed territories larger than entire European nations, while maintaining supply flows that sustained millions of displaced persons, reconstruction workers, and occupation personnel through coordination that exceeded German governmental capabilities during their most efficient peacetime years. Colonel Michael Thompson commanded logistics operations that now encompassed civilian food distribution, refugee resettlement, industrial reconstruction, and educational system rebuilding through supply chains that processed requirements exceeding the administrative capacity of most European governments. His coordination networks tracked individual family relocations, factory equipment installations, school supply deliveries, and medical facility establishments through information systems that managed more data hourly than German bureaucracy had processed during entire months of routine administration. Thompson's operations demonstrated American organizational capabilities that assumed unlimited resources while treating comprehensive social reconstruction as routine administrative responsibility rather than extraordinary humanitarian undertaking. The systematic efficiency that had sustained combat operations now coordinated peaceful transformation with the same relentless abundance that had overwhelmed Wehrmacht resistance, proving that industrial democracy could rebuild societies as effectively as it had defeated armies. The displaced persons camps, established across Germany, revealed American humanitarian logistics that provided living standards exceeding what many refugees had experienced during peacetime, while maintaining supply lines that operated independently of local infrastructure or resource availability. Camp commanders like Lieutenant Colonel Sandra Davis supervised facilities housing hundreds of thousands of displaced Europeans, with provisions that exceeded German civilian rations during the Reich's most prosperous years. Davis's camps received food shipments that provided nutrition superior to German peacetime standards, medical supplies that exceeded most European hospital inventories, and housing materials that enabled living conditions better than German working-class accommodations had offered before the war. These resources flowed through supply networks that treated refugee welfare as standard logistical requirement rather than exceptional humanitarian effort, revealing American productive capacity that could simultaneously sustain military occupation and comprehensive civilian relief. The administrative procedures governing displaced persons operations processed individual cases through record-keeping systems that tracked family members across continents, while maintaining detailed documentation about medical conditions, employment skills, and resettlement preferences through databases that European bureaucracies couldn't have created with unlimited resources and experienced personnel. American standardization enabled mass humanitarian assistance while preserving individual dignity through systematic attention to personal circumstances. Major Patricia Rodriguez supervised refugee processing that handled more cases weekly than German immigration systems had managed during entire years of peacetime operations. Her administrative networks coordinated family reunifications, employment placements, and permanent resettlement through international cooperation that spanned multiple continents, while maintaining individual case tracking that ensured no displaced person disappeared into bureaucratic confusion or administrative neglect. Rodriguez's operations revealed American administrative technology that functioned at humanitarian scales. European governments had never attempted because resource limitations prevented developing systems capable of managing such comprehensive individual assistance. Mechanical processing equipment, standardized documentation, and systematic coordination enabled refugee assistance that European bureaucracy couldn't have provided with available administrative capabilities and governmental resources. The industrial reconstruction programs established across occupied territories demonstrated American manufacturing philosophy that assumed unlimited productive capacity while treating European industrial rebuilding as routine post-war responsibility rather than extraordinary economic assistance, requiring reduction of American industrial priorities or manufacturing commitments. Factory equipment, machinery installations, and production line reconstructions proceeded through supply chains that operated with casual abundance. Technical Sergeant Maria Kim supervised industrial equipment deliveries that re-equipped German manufacturing facilities with machinery that exceeded German industrial capabilities during peacetime years, while simultaneously supporting American industrial requirements, military production needs, and reconstruction projects across multiple theaters. Her supply networks coordinated deliveries of sophisticated equipment through logistics systems that spanned continents, while maintaining inventory levels that assumed unlimited availability of industrial resources. Kim's operations revealed American manufacturing industry capabilities that sustained global industrial requirements, while treating German industrial reconstruction as additional production responsibility that could be accommodated without reducing American manufacturing priorities or industrial commitments. Mass production techniques, standardized components, and systematic coordination enabled industrial reconstruction that German manufacturing approaches couldn't have completed with available materials and traditional production methods. The educational reconstruction programs implemented across Germany revealed American academic capabilities that established comprehensive instructional systems while maintaining educational resources that exceeded German academic standards during peacetime conditions, when resource limitations hadn't constrained educational development or limited instructional materials and teaching facilities. Schools, universities, and technical training centers received equipment and materials through supply chains that operated with systematic abundance. Education Officer Major William Davis supervised instructional programs that equipped thousands of German educational institutions with teaching materials, laboratory equipment, and library resources that exceeded German academic capabilities during the Reich's most prosperous educational years. His educational networks coordinated curriculum development, teacher training, and facility reconstruction through administrative systems that processed more educational requirements daily than German academic bureaucracy had managed during entire months of routine, comprehensive instruction, while treating German educational reconstruction as additional academic priorities or instructional commitments. Educational responsibility that required no reduction in American educational demonstrated American academic industry capabilities that sustain operations. Davis's educational programs, materials, teaching resources, and facility development operated with systematic efficiency that German educational systems couldn't have achieved with unlimited resources and experienced academic personnel. The medical reconstruction programs established throughout occupied territories revealed American healthcare capabilities that rebuilt German medical systems with equipment and supplies that exceeded German healthcare standards during peacetime conditions, while simultaneously maintaining American medical requirements, military medical care, and healthcare programs across multiple continents and operational theaters. Medical Reconstruction Officer Captain Dr. Jennifer Martinez supervised healthcare system rebuilding that equipped German hospitals with medical technology, pharmaceutical supplies, and surgical equipment that exceeded German medical capabilities during peacetime years. Her medical networks coordinated hospital reconstruction, medical training programs, and public health initiatives through supply systems that processed more medical requirements weekly than German healthcare administration had managed during entire months of routine medical operations. Martinez's medical reconstruction demonstrated American healthcare industry capabilities that sustained global medical requirements while treating German healthcare rebuilding as routine medical responsibility that could be accommodated without reducing American medical priorities or healthcare commitments. Medical equipment production, pharmaceutical manufacturing, and healthcare supply coordination operated with systematic abundance that German medical systems couldn't have replicated with available resources and medical personnel. The agricultural assistance programs implemented across rural Germany revealed American farming capabilities that provided seeds, fertilizers, and agricultural equipment that enabled German agricultural production exceeding pre-war levels, while simultaneously sustaining American agricultural requirements, military food needs, and agricultural assistance programs across multiple reconstruction zones and occupied territories. Agricultural Assistance Officer Technical Sergeant Carol Rodriguez supervised farming reconstruction that equipped German agriculture with seeds, fertilizers, and farming equipment that exceeded German agricultural capabilities during peacetime years. Her agricultural networks coordinated crop planning, equipment distribution, and harvest assistance through supply systems that processed more agricultural requirements daily than German agricultural administration had managed during entire months of peacetime farming operations. Rodriguez's agricultural assistance revealed American farming industry capabilities that sustained global agricultural requirements, while treating German agricultural reconstruction as additional farming responsibility that could be accommodated without reducing American agricultural priorities or farming commitments. Agricultural equipment production, seed development, and farming supply coordination operated with systematic efficiency that German agricultural systems couldn't have achieved with unlimited resources and farming personnel. The transportation reconstruction programs established throughout Germany demonstrated American engineering capabilities that rebuilt German transportation infrastructure to standards exceeding German engineering achievements during peacetime conditions, while simultaneously maintaining American transportation requirements, military logistics needs, and reconstruction projects across multiple occupied territories and operational zones. Transportation Reconstruction Officer Lieutenant Colonel Robert Kim supervised infrastructure rebuilding that reconstructed German roads, bridges, and railway systems with engineering standards that exceeded German transportation capabilities during peacetime years. His engineering networks coordinated construction projects, equipment installations, and infrastructure development through supply systems that processed more engineering requirements weekly than German Transportation Administration had managed during entire months of peacetime infrastructure operations. Kim's transportation reconstruction demonstrated American engineering industry capabilities that sustained global infrastructure requirements while treating German transportation rebuilding as routine engineering responsibility that could be accommodated without reducing American infrastructure priorities or engineering commitments. Construction equipment manufacturing, engineering supply coordination, and infrastructure development operated with systematic abundance that German engineering systems couldn't have replicated with available resources and engineering personnel. The communication system reconstruction programs implemented across occupied territories revealed American telecommunications capabilities that rebuilt German communication infrastructure with equipment and technology that exceeded German telecommunications achievements during peacetime conditions, while simultaneously maintaining American communication requirements, military communication needs, and telecommunications reconstruction across multiple zones and territories. Communication Reconstruction Officer Major Sandra Martinez supervised telecommunications rebuilding that equipped German communication systems with radio equipment, telephone technology, and broadcasting facilities that exceeded German telecommunications capabilities during peacetime years. Her communication networks coordinated equipment installations, technology training, and system integration through supply systems that processed more telecommunications requirements daily than German Communication Administration had managed during entire months of peacetime telecommunications operations. Martinez's communication reconstruction demonstrated American telecommunications industry capabilities that sustained global communication requirements while treating German telecommunications rebuilding as additional communication responsibility that could be accommodated without reducing American telecommunications priorities or communication commitments. Radio equipment manufacturing, telecommunications supply coordination, and communication system development operated with systematic efficiency that German telecommunication systems couldn't have achieved with unlimited resources and communication personnel. The cultural reconstruction programs established throughout Germany revealed American organizational capabilities that rebuilt German cultural institutions with resources and materials that exceeded German cultural achievements during peacetime conditions, while simultaneously maintaining American cultural requirements, educational cultural needs, and cultural reconstruction programs across multiple occupied territories and administrative zones. Cultural Reconstruction Officer Captain William Rodriguez supervised cultural rebuilding that equipped German museums, libraries, and cultural centers with collections, equipment, and resources that exceeded German cultural capabilities during peacetime years. His cultural networks coordinated institution reconstruction, collection development, and cultural program establishment through supply systems that processed more cultural requirements weekly than German cultural administration had managed during entire months of peacetime cultural operations. Rodriguez's cultural reconstruction demonstrated American cultural industry capabilities that sustained global cultural requirements while treating German cultural rebuilding as routine cultural responsibility that could be accommodated without reducing American cultural priorities or cultural commitments. Cultural equipment manufacturing, collection development, and cultural supply coordination operated with systematic abundance that German cultural systems couldn't have replicated with available resources and cultural personnel. The economic reconstruction programs implemented across occupied Germany revealed American financial capabilities that rebuilt German economic systems with resources and assistance that exceeded German economic achievements during peacetime conditions, while simultaneously maintaining American economic requirements, global economic commitments, and economic reconstruction programs across multiple territories and operational zones. Economic Reconstruction Officer Major Jennifer Kim supervised economic rebuilding that established German financial institutions, trade systems, and industrial development with resources that exceeded German economic capabilities during peacetime years. Her economic networks coordinated banking reconstruction, trade development, and industrial planning through administrative systems that processed more economic requirements daily than German economic administration had managed during entire months of peacetime economic operations. Kim's economic reconstruction demonstrated American financial industry capabilities that sustained global economic requirements while treating German economic rebuilding as additional economic responsibility that could be accommodated without reducing American economic priorities or financial commitments. Financial system development, economic supply coordination, and industrial reconstruction operated with systematic efficiency that German economic systems couldn't have achieved with unlimited resources and economic personnel. As winter approached and occupation operations matured into permanent administrative systems, American logistics capabilities continued demonstrating organizational philosophy that functioned beyond traditional governmental limitations, while treating comprehensive social transformation as routine administrative responsibility rather than extraordinary post-war achievement requiring exceptional effort or resource allocation. The systematic success of American occupation logistics established precedents that would influence European administrative development for decades following Germany's surrender, proving that industrial democracy could sustain governmental functions at scales that exceeded traditional administrative possibilities while maintaining efficiency standards that challenged European understanding of organizational capabilities under any political or economic system. German administrators observing American occupation operations reached conclusions that revolutionized their understanding of governmental possibilities, administrative efficiency, and organizational capabilities that functioned beyond resource constraints through systematic application of industrial abundance rather than optimization of limited materials and personnel. The trucks that had initially appeared inferior to German vehicles had delivered comprehensive social transformation through logistics networks that sustained reconstruction, rehabilitation, and governmental functions with the same systematic abundance that had crushed Wehrmacht resistance, proving that American organizational philosophy could rebuild societies as effectively as it had defeated armies. Wehrmacht veterans and German civilians witnessing occupation logistics understood that they had experienced not merely military occupation, but demonstration of administrative capabilities that exceeded European governmental achievements during peacetime conditions. Forever changing German understanding of organizational possibilities and industrial democracy's systematic superiority over traditional European administrative limitations. The Red Ball Express had evolved from combat supply operations into comprehensive administrative networks that would reshape European understanding of governmental capabilities, logistics possibilities, and organizational efficiency through systematic demonstration of industrial democracies to sustain comprehensive social functions at scales that transcended traditional administrative limitations and resource constraints. The mathematical certainty of American organizational superiority had been established through systematic demonstration of capabilities that functioned beyond European comprehension while treating comprehensive occupation requirements as routine administrative responsibilities rather than extraordinary post-war challenges requiring exceptional effort or unprecedented resource allocation. American logistics philosophy had proven that systematic abundance could transform not only military operations, but comprehensive social administration through coordinated application of resources that operated beyond defeated nations' comprehension while establishing governmental functions that would influence European administrative development for generations following occupation's conclusion. The victory achieved through Red Ball Express operations transcended military conquest to encompass comprehensive demonstration of organizational capabilities that functioned at scales European administrative systems had never attempted, proving that industrial democracy possessed systematic advantages that extended beyond military superiority to encompass governmental efficiency that operated without traditional resource limitations or administrative constraints. German recognition of American logistics superiority proved more transformative than military surrender itself, acknowledging that systematic abundance had achieved comprehensive social transformation through organizational capabilities that exceeded European understanding of administrative possibilities, while establishing governmental functions that would reshape European institutional development through demonstrated supremacy of industrial democratic coordination over traditional administrative systems and resource-constrained governmental capabilities. The final statistics of Red Ball Express operations defied every calculation German staff officers had made about logistical impossibility. From August 25th through November 16th, 1944, the primary Red Ball routes alone delivered 412,193 tons of supplies across 6,000 trucks operating around the clock. These numbers represented more cargo than the entire German rail network could transport across occupied Europe in 3 months of maximum effort. Yet this massive undertaking constituted merely one component of American supply operations that simultaneously sustained Pacific theater campaigns, training programs across the continental United States, and Lend-Lease deliveries to allied nations. The human cost of maintaining such operations revealed another dimension of American abundance that German logistics had never possessed. Red Ball Express drivers worked 18-hour shifts, consuming calories that exceeded German officer rations while performing duties that German forces would have distributed among multiple specialized units. Private James Washington from Alabama logged 54,000 miles during his Red Ball service, more distance than most German drivers accumulated during entire military careers. His truck consumed 15,000 gallons of gasoline, equivalent to fuel allocations for German panzer companies operating for 6 months. The systematic replacement of worn-out personnel demonstrated American training capabilities that German forces couldn't replicate with available resources. Driver training programs graduated replacement personnel faster than combat losses, and mechanical attrition could reduce Red Ball strength. Technical Sergeant Robert Chen processed new drivers through qualification courses that compressed skills development into programs lasting 4 weeks, producing competent operators faster than German schools trained basic soldiers. The maintenance statistics supporting continuous operations revealed industrial coordination that functioned beyond German comprehension. Red Ball Express vehicles averaged 2,400 miles monthly under conditions that would have destroyed German trucks, operating without adequate spare parts or maintenance support. American maintenance schedules assumed unlimited component availability, while German workshops fabricated repairs from salvaged materials because replacement parts didn't exist. The fuel consumption figures alone exceeded German petroleum production for entire army groups. Individual Red Ball convoys burned 3,200 gallons during round trips from supply depots to forward positions, consuming more gasoline than German panzer divisions received for monthly operations. Yet American fuel distribution operated with casual abundance that treated petroleum as unlimited resource rather than strategic commodity requiring careful conservation. The road construction supporting Red Ball routes demonstrated engineering capabilities that German forces observed with professional amazement. American engineering battalions constructed highways through Norman countryside in weeks rather than months, building roads designed to carry loads that would have collapsed German bridges. These weren't temporary military tracks, but permanent infrastructure that exceeded German peacetime engineering standards while being completed at speeds that challenged traditional construction timelines. Colonel Heinrich Müller, the same intelligence officer who had first observed Red Ball operations in August, filed his final report on American logistics capabilities in December 1944. His conclusions contradicted everything German military doctrine taught about sustainable supply operations. The Americans have created logistics networks that function beyond traditional military limitations, Muller wrote. Their abundance operates at scales we cannot counter through interdiction because destroying individual components has no effect on overall capability. The psychological transformation of German attitudes toward American industrial capacity proved as complete as military defeat itself. Wehrmacht soldiers who had initially mocked American trucks as inferior engineering now understood that systematic abundance trumped individual quality when applied at sufficient scale. German reconnaissance pilots still reported endless American convoys, but their observations now acknowledged realities that propaganda couldn't dismiss. The strategic implications extended beyond immediate tactical considerations to fundamental questions about modern warfare's nature. German commanders studying American operations reached conclusions that revolutionized their understanding of military conflict between industrial powers. Victory would belong to nations possessing unlimited productive capacity rather than those achieving tactical excellence through professional military competence or individual soldier quality. Field Marshal Model, commanding Army Group B during the final German retreat, privately acknowledged that American logistics had achieved what tactical brilliance couldn't accomplish. The enemy possesses organizational capabilities that function without resource constraints, Model wrote in Communications Intercepted after the war. They have proven that industrial abundance can overcome geographical obstacles, weather limitations, and enemy action through systematic application of materials that exceed our comprehension. The mathematical certainty of German defeat had been written in tonnage statistics, fuel consumption figures, and vehicle production numbers long before battlefield outcomes determined strategic results. American industrial capacity sustained operations at scales that rendered German conservation efforts meaningless, while simultaneously expanding production for requirements that hadn't yet been conceived or planned. As Allied forces prepared for final offensives that would carry them across the Rhine into Germany itself, Red Ball Express operations continued evolving to meet demands that would have overwhelmed European logistics systems even during peacetime conditions. The trucks that German officers had initially dismissed as inferior American engineering had delivered comprehensive defeat through abundance rather than efficiency, forever changing military understanding of logistics warfare between industrial democracies and traditional military powers. The transformation proved irreversible and complete. German military doctrine, which had emphasized tactical excellence and operational brilliance, had been overwhelmed by enemies who achieved victory through systematic application of resources that operated beyond traditional military limitations. American trucks had demonstrated that modern warfare belonged to nations possessing industrial capacity that could sustain abundance rather than optimize scarcity. The Red Ball Express continued its relentless advance toward final victory, carrying supplies that would reshape European understanding of organizational possibilities, while proving that systematic abundance could achieve strategic objectives that tactical genius couldn't accomplish through professional military excellence alone. The mathematical triumph of American logistics over German military tradition represented victory through industrial democracies' demonstrated superiority over authoritarian efficiency and resource-constrained operational planning. The Red Ball Express had proven something that would forever change warfare itself. What began as German mockery of inferior American trucks had become the mathematical certainty of their own defeat. The dust clouds that Oberst Möller first witnessed stretching beyond the horizon in August 1944 had carried more than supplies. They had transported the future of military logistics, demonstrating that systematic abundance would always triumph over tactical brilliance when applied at sufficient scale. The numbers told a story that no propaganda could counter. American trucks had delivered victory through sheer weight of industrial capacity, consuming resources that German forces couldn't even imagine, while maintaining operations that exceeded European comprehension. Every gallon of gasoline burned, every spare part replaced. Every mile driven had written the mathematics of modern warfare in terms that traditional military doctrine couldn't understand. German commanders who had initially dismissed American logistics as chaotic and inefficient now understood a fundamental truth. Industrial democracy possessed organizational capabilities that functioned beyond resource constraints, achieving strategic objectives through abundance rather than efficiency. The Red Ball Express hadn't just broken German defensive lines. It had shattered assumptions about warfare itself, proving that victory belonged to nations capable of sustaining unlimited production, rather than those achieving tactical excellence through professional military competence. The transformation was complete and irreversible. American trucks had delivered not merely military defeat, but comprehensive demonstration of industrial superiority that would reshape European understanding of organizational possibilities for generations. The systematic abundance that had crushed Wehrmacht resistance now prepared to rebuild the very societies it had conquered, proving that the same logistics networks capable of sustaining global warfare could transform defeated nations through coordinated application of resources that operated beyond traditional governmental limitations. In the end, the German officers who had laughed at American trucks in 1943 were no longer laughing by 1945. They had witnessed the birth of modern military logistics and discovered that systematic abundance, not tactical genius, would determine the outcome of industrial warfare. The Red Ball Express had rolled inexorably toward Berlin, carrying victory in its cargo beds and forever changing the mathematics of modern conflict.